Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Welcome to the program. On tonight's headlines.
And after this,
President Trump impeached for an unprecedented second time.
We're going to walk down.
China recorded its first COVID-19 death in 8 months as experts huddled to discuss worrying new strains of the coronavirus that are spreading rapidly around the world.
The Food and Drug Administration granted emergency use authorization to Pfizer-BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine after actual review by the country's medical and regulatory experts.
And the French car maker Renault unveils its new Renaulution strategic plan, which bets on the revival of its retro bestsellers as electric cars, including a vehicle inspired by the R5, the star of the 70s, due for release in 2023.
It has been 7 days since the World Watch mob stormed the U.S. Capitol, and the eyes of the world were again on the Capitol building, but this time as the U.S. House of Representatives impeached President Trump on a charge of instigating an assault. Today, the Democratic House moved with unprecedented speed to impeach a president for an unprecedented second time. Take a look.
And we know that the President of the United States incited this insurrection, this armed rebellion against our common country. He must go. He is a clear and present danger to the nation that we all love.
The left in America has incited far more political violence than the right. For months, our cities burned, police stations burned, our businesses were shattered, and they said nothing, or they cheerlead for it, and they fundraised for it, and they allowed it to happen in the greatest country in the world. Now, some have cited the metaphor that the president lit the flame. Well, they lit actual flames, actual fires, and we put them out.
Expired. There will be order in the House.
I yield back.
The president not only incited an insurrection against our government, but has in word and deed led a rebellion.
I believe impeaching the president in such a short time frame would be a mistake. No investigations have been completed. No hearings have been held. What's more, the Senate has confirmed that no trial will begin until after President-elect Biden is sworn in.
Now, all of these are directly connected to the riot that engulfed the Capitol 7 days ago, killing 5 people and injuring dozens. President Trump had encouraged supporters to march to the Capitol. Those calling for impeachment say these words incited the violence. Let's listen in.
And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them.
You know, I didn't like the president's speech on January 6th either. I thought he was wrong to assert that the vice president in Congress can pick and choose which electoral votes to count. He was wrong to set such a confrontational tone in a politically tense situation. But what did he actually say? His exact words were, quote, "I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard," unquote. That's impeachable? That's called freedom of speech. Now, he also threatened to oppose candidates in future elections. And by the way, that was directed at Republicans like me who'd resolved to uphold the constitutional process and protect the Electoral College. Well, so what? That's called politics. If we impeached every politician who gave a fiery speech to a crowd of partisans, this Capitol would be deserted.
But in a rare rebuke of any president, even some of his own party leaders and closest allies said he was responsible for what happened. Here's how Republican leader Kevin McCarthy has put it.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term.
In the House of Representatives, the only question was
On this vote,
how many Republicans would join the lockstep Democratic majority in the 232-197 vote. 10 Republicans broke ranks, including the party's number 3 in the House, Liz Cheney. And despite President Trump's denunciation of violence following the mayhem inflicted by his followers when they invaded Congress, fears of unrest are still high. Armed National Guards deployed across the Capitol and downtown Washington streets were blocked to traffic. In the Capitol building itself, guards in military fatigues and carrying assault rifles assembled, some of them grabbing naps nearly early Wednesday under the ornate statues and historical paintings. Now, Pelosi also announced fines of up to $10,000 for lawmakers who refuse to go through newly installed metal detectors after several Republican lawmakers pushed past police even after setting them off.
President Donald Trump urges Americans to be united and avoid violence in his first comments after being impeached, while avoiding any mention of the impeachment at all. Watch this.
Whether you are on the right or on the left, a Democrat or a Republican, there is never a justification for violence. No excuses, no exceptions. America is a nation of laws. Those who engaged in the attacks last week will be brought to justice. Today, I am calling on all Americans to overcome the passions of the moment and join together as one American people. Let us choose to move forward united for the good of our families, our communities, and our country. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
Despite Trump's denunciation of violence following the mayhem inflicted by his followers when they invaded Congress, fears of unrest are high. Armed National Guards deployed across the Capitol and downtown Washington streets were blocked to traffic. In the Capitol building itself, guards in full camouflage and carrying assault rifles assembled, some of them grabbing naps early Wednesday under the ornate statues and historical paintings. Some 20,000 National Guard soldiers are expected in Washington for Biden's inauguration, more than the combined number of U.S. troops officially deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. The Capitol building grounds are ringed by a security fence erected after the attack, similar to the one raised around the White House months ago when protests erupted nationwide against police killings of African Americans. Lawmakers on Wednesday formally accused Trump of inciting the mob that attacked the Capitol last week in a failed effort to stop Congress from finalizing the president's November loss to Joe Biden. The House voted 232 to 197 to impeach the president, with 10 members of Trump's Republican Party joining 222 Democrats.
And U.S. Olympic gold medalist, swimming gold medalist, Cleet Keller was charged by the Justice Department with participating in the January 6th attack on Congress by supporters of President Trump. Keller was filmed as part of the crowd that illegally entered the huge rotunda hall of the Capitol after violent protesters broke through police lines and forced their way in. A statement accompanying formal charges unveiled Wednesday said police identified the three-time Olympian first by what appears to be an official team jacket bearing the large logo USA on the back and an arm patch that read United States Olympic Team. He was charged with illegally entering the Capitol, violent or disorderly conduct, and obstructing law enforcement. Keller, 38, competed in the Olympics in 2000, 2004, and 2008, taking 2 golds and a silver in the 4x200-meter freestyle relays and 2 bronzes in the individual 400-meter freestyle.
Meanwhile, Twitter chief Jack Dorsey on Wednesday backed the messaging platform's ban of President Donald Trump's account, but said it sets a dangerous precedent and represents a failure to promote healthy conversations on social networks. Having to ban an account has real and significant ramifications, Dorsey said in a string of tweets about his take on the company's decision late last week to permanently bar the president. While there are clear and obvious exceptions, I feel a ban is a failure of ours, ultimately to promote healthy conversation, Dorsey said, inviting feedback from users. Trump's access to social media platforms that he used as a megaphone during his presidency has been largely cut off since a violent mob of his supporters stormed the Capitol in Washington last week. In addition to Twitter, bans have also been put in place by Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and Snapchat, while YouTube temporarily suspended his channel.
To other news now, 2 experts on an international mission to investigate the origins of COVID-19 in China are still in Singapore after testing positive for COVID antibodies, according to the WHO. The World Health Organization said earlier that the international team of experts had landed in Wuhan for the long-delayed mission, but it later tweeted that the 2 had yet to make it there. But it added that the team of more than a dozen experts had been tested again during a stopover in Singapore. WHO said all members were negative for PCR, which determines whether a person is currently infected with COVID-19. But 2 members had tested positive for the so-called IgM antibodies, which are usually the first antibodies produced by the immune system when a virus attacks. The WHO has for months been working to send a team of international experts, including epidemiologists and animal health specialists, to China to help probe the animal origin of the coronavirus pandemic and how the virus first crossed over to humans.
Meanwhile, China recorded its first COVID-19 death in 8 months on Thursday as experts huddled to discuss worrying new strains of the coronavirus that are spreading rapidly around the globe. The gathering in Geneva of the World Health Organization's Emergency Committee comes as their colleagues landed in Wuhan for a long-delayed mission to find the origins of the virus. More than 91 million people have been infected, with almost 2 million of them dying, according to figures widely thought to be an underestimate. Much of the planet is enveloped in a second or third wave of the disease, with populations chafing under painful and economically damaging restrictions. China, where the virus first emerged, has again locked down millions of people as it fights to control a fresh outbreak that now has claimed its first victim, sparking anguish on social media. The hashtag #NewVirusDeathInHebei quickly racked up 100 million views on Twitter, on the Twitter-like platform Weibo.
More than 10 million people have received their first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine in the U.S., according to official data, even as the country remains behind in its immunization targets. Of 29,380,125 doses of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine sent to the states, 10,278,462 have been administered as first doses, according to the CDC's tracker. That is around 3.1% of the total population of roughly 330 million people, though vaccines are not yet available to children. The U.S. has vaccinated more people than any other Western country. But rollout has fallen far behind goals set by authorities who had hoped to reach 20 million people by the end of December. As a percentage of population vaccinated, Israel is leading the world, followed by the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Britain, and then the U.S. Meanwhile, in New York, as part of a wartime mobilization, the state government opened a mass vaccination facility in Manhattan at the Javits Center, which served as a field hospital in the spring.
At this point, we are prepared to vaccinate 10,000 people, 10,000 New Yorkers in a 12-hour period. We have the ability to ramp that up to 25,000 people in a 24-hour period with the resources that we have here in place now. That said, we can't do that without vaccines coming to New York from Washington. That is the key component.
Because as we expand the population of those who are eligible, and as we increase distribution points, we're going to need more vaccines. We consider this a wartime mobilization, and that lives are on the line every minute of every day.
Still in the U.S., as COVID-19 tears through Southern California, small hospitals in rural towns like Apple Valley are overwhelmed with coronavirus patients crammed into hallways, makeshift ICU beds, and even the pediatric ward. Watch this.
It's most definitely the darkest period in my entire career. Most definitely. It's been very difficult watching this. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. We don't give up and we'll never give up.
No, honestly, I haven't been here long enough. Not yet, sir, okay? Not yet.
Astronomical numbers of patients are dying from this. The community needs to take this very seriously. It's been really tough on our team. Even though we're used to seeing patients dying, it's difficult because families can't be here all the time, and it's been much harder because we're dealing with families that are on phone calls sometimes or over Zoom watching their loved ones pass.
Staff burnout is a real thing, and our staff are struggling to physically meet the demands and emotionally hold it together. A lot of our staff are working many hours because we don't have enough nurses to care for all of the patients.
Are we ready? Erica? Yeah, good. I'm going to be down here, and you may or may not be down here.
Well, 225 still going on. I'm going to go check out 225. Let's go.
It's taking a toll on all of us, and especially the nurses in the facility. We've put together some spiritual care teams that are going around and trying to help people, but that's one of the things now. It's almost like we're developing this PTSD mentality amongst the staff, and we're really trying to keep an eye on that, but it's really draining. It's really hard.
One more. Touch the tip of your nose. With that same hand, touch my finger. What do you mean exactly?
And you hear a lot of negative comments about, it's a fake disease, this isn't real. It's so hard to swallow, when you're in the middle of it, living it every day, when your nurses are breaking down and crying on the unit because another patient died or they had to call another family member in. That's really hard. And I think it's frustrating for the staff when they see that in the community, that people don't take it seriously.
And staying in California, Disneyland opened a giant coronavirus vaccination center some 10 months after the pandemic's appearance forced the closure of the world-famous theme park. Take a look.
Once you get in, it was very quick. They inoculate you, and then you sit in an observation room for 15 minutes. That was it. Very easy.
It was very stressful and a little lonely the past year. So I would like to return to normalcy. Hopefully, maybe in another year, the world will be a little bit more normal.
The Philippines on Wednesday confirmed its first case of a British-identified coronavirus mutation that appears to be more infectious as authorities scramble to secure vaccine supplies. Watch this.
May bagong monster na naman. And I pray to God really na sana na hindi ito more dangerous, more toxic than the original COVID. Hanapin yung mga tao, tapos i-examine sila for their own good. Na sabihin, Adre, ka na nakausap mo yung na babae na may bagong strain, pati yung lalaki. Magpa-examine ka lang, baka nahawa ka. So, yun ang gagawin nila ni Dr. Duque.
Since taking hold in Britain, the fast-spreading new variant has been detected in dozens of countries and territories globally. President Duterte's government had hoped to keep the mutation out by shutting its borders to foreigners arriving from more than 30 nations. Filipinos returning home from countries on the list are allowed in, but must undergo 14 days quarantine even if they test negative for COVID-19. A Filipino businessman who flew to the United Arab Emirates, which is not on the list, on December 27 and returned to Manila on January 7, tested positive for the strain, the Health Department said. He is in a quarantine facility as authorities track down other passengers on Emirates flight EK332. Known contacts of the patient, including his travel partner who tested negative, are in strict quarantine, according to the department. The Philippines has recorded nearly 500,000 coronavirus infections, and officials fear a surge in cases following family reunions over the Christmas holidays and a massive religious gathering last weekend. It announced plans this week to begin vaccinating frontline workers next month, most likely with a jab developed by China's Sinovac, despite misgivings among many Filipinos about its efficacy. The government hopes to secure 148 million doses from 7 companies this year, enough for around 70% of its population. The bulk of them are expected to arrive in the second half.
Meanwhile, the Food and Drug Administration on Thursday granted emergency use authorization to Pfizer-BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine after actual review by the country's medical and regulatory experts. Now, the Pfizer-BioNTech shot, which has shown a 95% success rate, is the first vaccine the Philippines has approved. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez said that Pfizer may be the first COVID-19 vaccine to enter the country through the COVAX facility, which is an international platform aiming for equitable access to vaccines. He also said the government has also firmed up supply deals with Novavax, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Russia's Gamaleya Institute for 137 million doses in total. Galvez said these are on top of the 40 million doses the Philippines expects to receive through the World Health Organization's COVAX facility in the first quarter.
In other news, Turkish doctors and nurses rolled up their sleeves on Thursday as the nation of 83 million people launched a coronavirus vaccination drive with China's Sinovac jab. Health Minister Fahrettin Koca received the first shot of CoronaVac live on television after formally approving the vaccine Wednesday, despite contradictory data about its efficacy rate. Preliminary studies involving more than 7,000 volunteers in Turkey showed CoronaVac to be 91.25% effective. But a bigger trial in Brazil showed 50.4% efficacy, and a third one in Indonesia pointed to a 65.3% success rate, raising concerns about transparency from the Chinese manufacturers. One opinion poll conducted in November showed about half of Turkish respondents unwilling to take the jab. After covering Turkey's 1.1 million healthcare workers, the vaccination program will move on to essential workers and people aged 65 and above.
In other news, Canada granted the husband and 2 children of detained Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou a travel exemption to join her in Vancouver as she fights extradition to the United States, an official confirmed on Wednesday. Take a look. Now, most non-essential travel to Canada was halted last March in a bid to slow the spread of COVID-19 virus. But Ottawa can and has made exceptions, including for family reunifications. The first news that Meng's husband, Liu Xiaozong, arrived in October, followed by the children in December, emerged during her extradition trial this week. Meng's situation starkly contrasts that of 2 Canadians languishing in China's opaque legal system since their arrest in December 2018, while Meng was released on bail with conditions that include a curfew in her Vancouver mansion and that she wear a GPS monitoring ankle bracelet. Consular visits for former Canadian diplomat Michael Kovrig and businessman Michael Spavor were only restored in October after being suspended in January last year. The businesswoman, whose father is Huawei founder and CEO Ren Zhengwei, faces accusations that Huawei violated U.S. sanctions on Iran and hid its relationship with former subsidiary Skycom in Iran from HSBC Bank, which Meng denies.
Meanwhile, Washington's envoy to the United Nations hosts a virtual talk with Taiwan's president after her visit to the island was scrapped in a diplomatic volte-face during the chaotic last weeks of Trump administration. Ambassador Kelly Craft praised Taiwan's success in fighting the coronavirus while criticizing China for blocking the island from global bodies during a video discussion with President Tsai Ing-wen. Watch this.
People of Taiwan have been inspired by your action. They actually like you a lot. Whether it was meeting Ambassador Lee in New York, participating in the GCTF workshop, or speaking out publicly for Taiwan, your advocacy brought our countries closer and made the world understand Taiwan better. Moving forward, we will keep pushing for our participation in the United Nations and UN-affiliated meetings and events. And I hope that the United States will continue to support our.
China's authoritarian leadership views Taiwan as its own territory and has vowed to seize it one day. It keeps the island's 23 million people locked out of international bodies like the World Health Organization to reinforce Taiwan's diplomatic isolation. China criticized Thursday's phone call between Tsai and Craft. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said the Chinese side firmly opposes any form of official exchanges between the U.S. and Taiwan.
South Korea's top court upheld a 20-year prison sentence for disgraced former President Park Geun-hye on Thursday in the final ruling over the corruption scandal that brought her down. Take a look. The decision brings to an end an extended legal process that involved multiple trials and appeals, including a previous Supreme Court hearing. The country's first female president was impeached in 2017 after huge street protests against her rule. She was convicted the following year of bribery and abuse of power and jailed for 30 years. A series of appeals, a retrial, and further appeals followed, which reduced her sentence to 20 years. On Thursday, the case went for a second time before the Supreme Court, which said it accepted and confirmed the 20-year sentence. The court also upheld fines and forfeits totaling 21.5 billion won, or 19.5 million U.S. dollars.
In other news, investigators from the National Transportation Safety Committee cleans and examines the flight data recorder from the crashed Sriwijaya Air Boeing 737-500, which carried 62 crew and passengers. Data downloaded from the recorder may offer clue as to why the jet plunged about 10,000 feet in less than a minute before slamming into the Java Sea just after takeoff from Jakarta. The discovery came as a team from the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board prepared to join the investigation in the capital, along with staff from Boeing, the Federal Aviation Administration, and jet engine producer GE Aviation. Authorities said the crew did not declare an emergency or report technical problems with the plane before its dive, and that the 737 was probably intact when it hit the water, citing a relatively small area where the wreckage was scattered. The crash probe was likely to take months, but a preliminary report was expected in 30 days.
All right, we'll take a short break. Eagle News, we'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by Canreef Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events, fast, accurate, balanced, Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Okay, let's head on over to Switzerland. Joining us live is Man Glosser. Hello, Man. What is your update there in Switzerland?
Currently, Switzerland has 492,832 confirmed cases and 7,904 deaths. That's 2,474 cases and 52 deaths more in the past 24 hours. Swissmedic, the Swiss Agency for the Authorization and Supervision of Therapeutic Products, had already approved on December 19, 2020, a first vaccine, the one from Pfizer BioNTech. This week, Swissmedic approved a second COVID-19 vaccine, the one from Moderna. It is said that based on the safety, efficacy, and quality data, the vaccine is suited to adults aged 18 and over. The federal government has ordered 7.5 million doses of these, and together with the first approved vaccine, there will be around 500,000 doses of vaccine available in the country in the month of January. Like the previous vaccine, the one from Moderna has a novel technology, the mRNA, a type of messenger molecule that carries the instruction for building proteins. In short, this helps the immune system produce measurable antibodies against the virus and therefore help the body fight the virus. Actually, the Pfizer BioNTech and Moderna vaccines are pretty similar in terms of providing protection because they both have more or less 95% efficacy. The national vaccination strategy gives priority to high-risk vulnerable groups, so this includes elderly people and people with underlying conditions. Then priority goes to healthcare personnel, people who live with vulnerable people, and people in communal facilities. Once all the mentioned are vaccinated, can the rest have access to it, except children and pregnant women for which study data is not yet available. Back to you, Alma.
Very much, Man, for your updates there. How are you? How are you doing? How is it in Switzerland?
I'm doing good up until now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Yes, thank you, Alma. Thank you for having me. I'm Anne Gozer, reporting from the Geneva, Switzerland Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
Asian and European markets mostly advanced Thursday as investors awaited Joe Biden's proposals for substantial new stimulus and the U.S. Federal Reserve's policy outlook. The London stock market climbed 0.6% in late morning deals, while Frankfurt rose 0.3%, and Paris added 0.2% in midday Eurozone trade. Bitcoin gained for a third day, increasing by 2.2% to $38,090 on keen demand, but remained under the record $41,981 set on Friday. The U.S. dollar wavered against the euro and yen, while oil prices steadied. News that Donald Trump had been impeached for a historic second time appeared to have little immediate impact on sentiment, despite worries about more unrest ahead of Biden's inauguration on January 20.
Meanwhile, main shopping streets in England's town and cities could lose another 400,000 plus jobs after coronavirus passes, as Britons continue to work from home and buy online, according to accountants KPMG on Thursday. COVID-19 has already ravaged the UK retail sector, with tens of thousands of jobs being lost and big-name bankruptcies. Although supermarkets have boomed, the reduction in computer footfall and the accelerated shift to online shopping is exacerbating the vacuum in city and town centers, with less people calling in to shop. according to KPMG study of 109 towns and cities. KPMG UK chief economist Yael Selfin said consumers were more likely to purchase household goods online in the wake of the pandemic.
Meanwhile, supermarkets in Northern Ireland are facing supply problems following customs changes brought about by Brexit, with some such as the Sainsbury's branch in Bangor seeing empty shelves. An open border was a key plank of the 1998 peace deal, which ended 30 years of violence over British rule in Northern Ireland. But the move requires special checks on goods arriving in Northern Ireland from mainland Britain in case of the risk of them heading across the border into Ireland.
And the opening of the first ever Super Mario theme park has been delayed again as Japan battles a surge in coronavirus cases, according to Universal Studios Japan. Nintendo's long-awaited foray into amusement parks was originally set to open in July 2020 ahead of the Tokyo Olympics, but like the games, its launch was delayed by the coronavirus pandemic, with a new date set for February 4, featuring a real-life Bowser's Castle and an interactive Mario Kart ride. The attraction, part of the existing USJ Park in the western city of Osaka, had been expected to draw huge crowds. After the government extended a virus state of emergency to Osaka this week to stem a surge of cases, the organizers decided to postpone the opening for the second time.
Meanwhile, China's trade surplus with the United States widened last year, underlining the failure of Donald Trump to narrow the gap during his tenure, while demand soared for electronics and medical equipment during the coronavirus pandemic. The pickup came on the back of a jump in exports through most of last year as China's factories kicked back into gear from the second quarter following a strict lockdown that managed to broadly contain COVID-19 and allow economic activity to return. Trump had made addressing the gaping trade gap with China a priority when he took office 4 years ago and signed a partial agreement with Beijing to boost the country's purchases of goods such as soybeans. But Chinese customs data showed the surplus with the U.S. climbed 7.1% to $316.9 billion in 2020, while the world's second largest economy suffered a record contraction in the first quarter of last year as the coronavirus essentially brought all activity to a halt. It soon recovered as lockdowns around the country were eased and people went back to work.
French car maker Renault unveils its new Renulation strategic plan, which bets on the revival of its retro bestsellers as electric cars, including a vehicle inspired by the R5, the star of the 70s, due for release in 2023. Take a look. Now, Renault's design director Gil Vidal repurposed styling elements from the original to meet the needs of a modern EV, like the offset bonnet intake, which now hides the charging hatch, the rear lights that feature aero flaps, and the front fog lights, which now act as daytime running lights. It also features front and rear logos that light up, a textile roof panel, as well as the French flag on the door mirrors. Renault didn't reveal any shots of the interior yet, but says it features a small transparent screen on the dashboard that can also project messages to people outside the vehicle. Renault 5 EV will also be joined by a modern EV reincarnation of another historic nameplate, the Renault 4. The French automaker wants 30% of its sales to be fully electric vehicles by 2025. And models like the new 5 will definitely play a big role in this.
In the northern Chinese city of Shenyang, robotic arms built to collect samples quickly while lowering the risk of cross-infection between people were used as part of a campaign to suppress a rise in coronavirus cases in the surrounding province. Watch this.
Inspired by how schools of fish intuitively synchronize their movements, Harvard scientists have engineered miniature underwater robots capable of forming autonomous swarms. Each robotic fish, known as Bluebot, is equipped with cameras and blue LED lights that sense the direction and distance of others inside water tanks. Take a look.
Eagle News, we'll be right back. Don't go away.
Portion is brought to you by Kubert, an expert in air conditioning and electromechanical. Also engaged in structural, electrical, fire protection, plumbing, and sanitary services. Kubert, your ultimate MEPS and air conditioning solutions.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back to the news. James Harden is joining the Brooklyn Nets in a blockbuster NBA trade from the Houston Rockets, U.S. media reported Wednesday. ESPN and The Athletic reported that the 2018 NBA MVP will head to the Nets in a trade that will see Harden reunited with former Oklahoma City Thunder teammate Kevin Durant. The 31-year-old played alongside Durant for 3 seasons in Oklahoma City between 2009 and 2012. In exchange for Harden, Houston received multiple players and draft picks, as well as guard Caris LeVert. Harden's move raises the prospects of the Nets emerging as a new super team, with the unhappy Rockets ace joining forces with Durant and Kyrie Irving. Harden's exit from the Rockets had loomed ever closer, with teammates complaining of his attitude in the locker room. On Tuesday, Harden had lashed out after the Rockets were thumped 117-100 at home by the Los Angeles Lakers. "I love the city," Harden said. "I literally have done everything that I can. I mean, this situation is crazy," he said. "It's something that I don't think can be fixed." Teammate John Wall accused Harden of not being committed to the team. The Rockets' DeMarcus Cousins, meanwhile, accused Harden of being disrespectful to the Houston locker room. Harden, an 8-time NBA All-Star and a prolific scorer, joined Houston in 2012 after starting his career in Oklahoma City. However, he was unable to guide the Rockets to an NBA championship during that time, and instead suffered a string of playoff disappointments, with Houston failing to make the NBA Finals once in 8 straight playoffs appearances.
Still in NBA news, game postponements were piling up on Wednesday as the NBA's measures to prevent the spread of coronavirus left teams with too few players to take to the court. The league said Wednesday evening that a pair of Friday games, Washington at Detroit and Golden State at Phoenix, had been postponed because contact tracing within the Wizards and Suns meant the teams would not have the league-required 8 available players. The league had earlier postponed the Suns' scheduled clash against the Atlanta Hawks, one of 3 contests originally set for Wednesday that had to be called off. 9 games have now been scratched as the season heads into its 4th week. The league and its players' union updated COVID-19 health and safety protocols on Tuesday aimed at keeping players healthy and available to play.
Finally, in our news, 20 specially trained air dogs from the Sri Lankan Air Force take part in a graduation ceremony wearing yellow robes and walking next to their handlers. The graduating batch of dogs will be employed at the international airport in Sri Lanka, where they will put their sniffing capabilities to help detect drugs and explosives. Watch this.
We are looking into the detection of the drugs and explosives, and we know that it's a menace in this country of the drugs coming through various means. And I believe that by employing these dogs, then we will be able to eradicate much of these problems through their drugs.
So cute.
So cute. If I were a dog, I'd be one of those taking a nap. That's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. Please join us again tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live in interesting times.